Welcome to another episode of the Residential Developer Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Nathan Battershall. And as I promised last week, I want to talk about a topic this week called winning the feasibility battle. Now, for me, there's a lot of people out there, and I see this over and over and over, that there's so many people out there that are not skilled when it comes to running feasibilities, and they're not seasoned in that space. Now, the thing about feasibilities, they don't cost you anything to run. And the one thing I've learned in this space is it's an art. There's an art to it, but there's also a science and there's a methodology to running feasibilities. And the good thing is there's so much education out there on how to run healthy and good feasos now. But the thing that I've learned about feasos is that the big thing it will cost you is some time. But one thing I've found is a lot of the pressure in this industry when it comes to doing projects, residential development-based projects, the one thing I've found, the biggest pressure builder I've found comes on people when they have not run their feasibilities appropriately. Now, when I talk about feasibilities, I'm talking about running a feasibility from the point of view, does the site first and foremost work from a compliance and a buildability point of view? And then second is that from a financial and from a business and commercial point of view, does the feasibility stack up? Because for me, that's where almost all projects come undone, is at that feasibility standpoint. And look, I get it. A lot of people, they make the wrong decisions when they get emotionally invested, or they become emotionally attached to a project or to a site or to a type of development. Some people, I guess, they have capital and they want to invest it, so they make unwise decisions because they're in a hurry to invest, or they're concerned they're going to miss out if something doesn't come up. But one thing I've found is that the people that become the best in this space are the ones who are constantly looking at sites. Now, the people that I've found that are the best in this space, they get to the point where, look, it's healthy to have a spreadsheet. It's important to have a spreadsheet, but one thing you'll find, the more you play in this space and the more skilled you come in a particular area. And that's why I always tell people, try and pick a couple of areas. Like, it's all well and good to be blanketing all of Australia or all of New South Wales or all of Sydney or all of the South Coast or all of Newcastle for a site. But I think the people that become the best at this are the ones who become laser focused in a particular area and look at an area that makes good money and then just become a specialist in that particular area. Because I think, look, the danger can be it's impossible to become a specialist across every area. So for me, I always say, like, find one area. Like, if you're only doing one development every couple of years, there's no point finding 10, 15 areas. Like, just find an area that's proven, an area where it stacks up, an area where it works, and ingratiate yourself into that area. Because what you want to do, you want to be the type of person who understands the history of every resale of that particular product. If you're doing duplexes or townhouses or detached dual locks, or if you're doing splitters or if you're doing developments where you're keeping an existing house, flicking another, you want to become so laser focused in that space that you understand and that you know that area so well, you know that location so well that you get a really good grip and strong understanding of what the products sell for. Because for me, at the end of the day, first and foremost, you're looking at, okay, what do you need to pay for the site? What are infill sites selling for in that area? Obviously, you need to get a good, strong understanding of build costs, and, you know, how much different products cost to build. And yes, it takes time to work that out. Obviously, without plans, it's hard to get pricing from builders. If you become switched on enough in that space, you'll be able to start to, you know, talk around and speak around, especially if you are someone who's serious about doing development. You can talk to the builder that built the last two products in that area and, you know, get a good idea of what it costs to build. And, you know, you can put in your contingencies, and you can be, over time, you can be watching how long those products took to build, how long did they take to sell, you know, how long Did they have to drop the price? Were they sold at auction? Were they sold off market? Were they sold prior to completion? Every product's different, every area is different. So the more you can get a strong understanding and knowledge in that area, you can you can really start to understand and know how that works. And look, I think the best thing you can do is become good at testing sites. Even if you've got no intention of buying a site, the more you test sites, you'll understand why that site didn't work. Cause it's all well and good looking at the sites that do work, but study and understand the sites that didn't work and don't work, and why don't they work. And so by running feasibilities on sites that couldn't sell, or sites that were overcapitalized, by testing those sites, running numbers on them, getting laser focused and finding the holes and understanding of what was it about that site that made it not work. Because it's not always as simple as they paid too much for the site. Sometimes there's other things that are in and around it that make that site not viable. And the more you test those areas, you can start to understand, was it, is it an area that's too close to the highway, so it's got some highway noise and that's detracting buyers and that's causing, buyers to not be committed in that space? Is it just that little bit further away from services? Is it too slopey or too steep, and this particular buyer is a downsizer that's wanting something a little bit flatter, or what is it about these sites that's making people turn off? Other rooms in that product too small? Does this market want double garage and all this product single? What is it about this product that's that's making it not viable and not suitable? Like that product that faces due south, and is that going to make or break that development? Is it going to put it in that place where you're just not going to get top dollar? So you've got to drop your prices and it might sit on the market for a little bit longer. Like, there's so many little things you can test and measure and really do the flex test on that site to see how it doesn't work. And one thing, it's like anything in life. It's like training a muscle. Like, the more you train that feasibility muscle, the stronger it'll get. So the more you're running numbers, the more you're constantly punching numbers and putting numbers into feasibilities into your spreadsheets and looking at it, studying it, understanding it, the more you'll start to really be able to be laser focused then when it comes to looking for sites. Like, that's where you'll see some of the seasoned investors and developers out there that will be able to just straight away know a site does not work. They don't even need to put a single number into the Feaso, because they've run numbers so rapidly and so quickly, they know it does not work. Like, often I'll have someone come to me with a site just to look at it in the areas I know I have a laser focused knowledge of. There's certain sites, as soon as I see the address, I know it doesn't work. Now, that's not an arrogance thing, but that's because over and over and over and over and over again in certain areas I've continued to flex that feasibility muscle to the point I know the areas so well, and I know certain areas just do not work. I might only need to see one number. I may just need to see one number. Sometimes I don't even need to see a number. Sometimes it's just a case of just knowing an area does not stack. Sometimes it's not even the suburb. Sometimes it's just one part of a suburb. Sometimes it's just one part of a suburb, one little area of a suburb you just know it does not stack, but then you can drive 200 metres up the road and it stacks. But all that comes through is time. And often a lot of people, they're not willing to exercise that muscle. It's just no different to when you go to the gym. Like, we all know we should be doing something exercise-wise every day, whether it be running or walking or swimming or going to the gym, doing some sort of fitness and exercise and eating healthy. But knowing that we need to do it and actually physically doing it and pulling the trigger on it is two different things. And it's all well and good to know, to have the knowledge, that you need to do it. But if you're not actually doing it, the reality is you're not going to get healthy. And it's the exact same thing when it comes to doing developments. The best way to become good at doing developments is to exercise that feasibility muscle. The more you exercise that realm and that part of for me, it's the most important part of a development. Now, does it mean that every other part of the development is not important? 100% no. But for me, a feasibility will make or break a development every day of the week. Your feaso will make or break a development. Now, when I say feaso, it's not just numbers, it's everything. Factoring in time. I talk about this all the time. Developers don't, and investors do not spend enough time factoring in time frames, approval time frames, build time frames, selling time frames, the whole works. It all comes in under this beautiful thing we call feasibility. And for me, it makes or breaks a development. And I just think a lot of people don't spend enough time becoming laser focused in this area and becoming, excellent in this space and in this area. And I just think it's an area that you have to do the hard yards. You have to do the reps. Just like when you go to the gym, you have to do the reps. You can't just go one day and then not go again. You've got to wake up every morning. If you go in the morning, I get up, about 6 o'clock every morning, 6:15. And some weeks, 3 or 4 days, I do not want to get up. If I've had a big day or a big night before, I do not want to get up. But I've got to continually make the decision and have the motivation to say, get out of bed and get in there to the gym. And it's the same thing with feasibilities. We have to have the motivation to just decide to do it. And that's where I look at some of the most seasoned guys around. They're running numbers constantly, even on sites they're not looking to buy, because they understand that they're exercising that muscle of understanding numbers, understanding feasibilities, because if you spend too long away from it, you lose touch with reality, because markets can shift so quickly. Markets can shift so rapidly and so quickly. So if you're not ahead of the game and if you're not continually in that space, you become out of touch, and yesterday's numbers don't match tomorrow's results. And you can put yourself in a whole lot of world of pain, in a whole lot of trouble, because you haven't taken the time to do those feasibilities and to win that feasibility battle. And I think it's just a key thing. I think it's important to continually work that muscle, even if you're not in a position to do a development for 2 years' time. What's it going to cost you just to run the exercise? When you see a potential great site, run the numbers. Does it work? Does it stack? Because you just never know. Sometimes one of those opportunities that on the surface looks too good to be true can be a possibility, because you took the time to run the numbers when everyone else was overlooking it, neglecting it, not watching it, and all of a sudden you might have been 2 years away from pulling the trigger. All of a sudden you can jiggle things and move things around. And sometimes that's where the greatest and best deals are found, is when you weren't actively ready or looking to do a deal. But when a deal comes, you need to be ready to pivot and ready to move and ready to look at opportunities. Sometimes it could be joint ventures or bringing in equity partners, or, looking at moving things around or moving another property that, you're planning to hold for a little bit longer. Like when a deal that is an absolute cracker comes along, often these deals come along when you're not ready to do it, or when you weren't planning to do it. It's rare that a perfect deal falls in your lap the moment you've got the funds and the ability. That's why I laugh at a lot of clients and investors and developers who they're cashed up, they're ready to go, ready to pull the trigger, and nothing's working, nothing's stacking, nothing's hitting the mark, which I feel for them, because it's frustrating, because they've got the capital, they're ready to rock and roll, they're ready to go. But, for me, you want to be looking in and out of season of when you're looking to pull the trigger on a development. You want to be at that place where you're constantly looking at deals, because, look, not everyone has that ability, and I get it. I don't want this podcast to be something that is unreachable for a large percentage of people, and I get it. Like, it's, I got a property late last year that I wasn't ready to get. So I had to move a whole lot of stuff around to be able to do it. But it was a property I knew I could put some really great equity in. But because I'd been on the lookout, not for it to actively start a project, but for me it's a passion as well. But I think it's just an exercise I've decided to make a weekly rhythm for myself, is where I'm constantly looking at deals and looking at things. And obviously for me, I've got the ability to see deals and flick it to people I know in this industry or in this space who want to do developments. But for me, I just decided on my, if I want to be good at this thing, if I want to be good at development, if I want to be, terrific in my own journey of projects and developments, I need to flex that muscle. I need to every day flex that muscle, every week flex that muscle, and decide that I'm going to look at sites, I'm going to run numbers, I'm going to run feasos, I'm going to look at comparables, I'm going to, get my head around resales, I'm going to get my head around construction, I'm going to get my head around constraints and, all the different things that make an area work and another area not work, and really ingratiate myself into that space. And, for me, it enabled me to find something that, was quite workable. Now, even another thing, I a few weeks ago I spoke about getting a unregistered piece of land. Now, for me, that might look like luck to some people, but for me, again, that came as a result of exercising that feasibility muscle. Constantly looking at areas and studying areas and knowing areas. Like for me, that area, I knew that area, it was on its last sort of round of land that could be developed in that particular area. Ticks a lot of boxes. It's in a highly desirable area. A lot of the, Canberrians and like to go into that area. So I just knew that would be a terrific space and a terrific area. And I knew that was the last stage of that particular area, but also knew I had a bit of a gut feel, just because I knew obviously construction industry and where things were at. I had a gut feel it was going to take a lot longer than they originally anticipated for, things like registration and being able to pull the trigger on the development. So obviously that bought time. It did a whole lot of things in the background. Now, look, sometimes timing comes as a result of luck. Sometimes it's a combination of luck and expertise, but I believe also you can really win as a result of flexing that muscle, that feasibility muscle, and becoming really skilled in that space. Because the more you do it, the more you understand trends, the more you understand numbers, the more you understand how the market works, the more you understand how that area works. The more you put yourself into the game of development and of investment in that area of your expertise and knowledge, you begin to see things a lot clearer than others do not. And that's where you can really start to win, because you're so involved in that space. You see things at a whole new level and a whole new way that other people may not necessarily see it. I love hearing stories of some of the great sports people where they talk about where they just got into that zone of, because they'd done so many reps, because they put in so much hard work. Like, there's obviously people who are just super talented. They can go out there and just wing it and make it happen. But then you hear the stories of the people, they put in the reps, they put in the time, they put in the effort, they've got the experience of game after game after game after game. They get that winning mentality. They understand how to close out a game. They understand how to do all these different parts, and they almost, you hear some of them talk where they almost say that it's almost like they've watched a movie of themselves doing what they were about to do already before, because they understood how the game was going to flow, how it was going to work out, how it was going to pan out. They understood the opposition. They'd studied it. They'd put in the yards. They put in the effort. They understood some of the chess pieces moving before they'd even moved, because there'd been so much of that legwork go in. And can be the same, in a lot of your development journey. The more you do it, the more you understand it, the more you understand what doesn't work and how it works and why it didn't work and why it did work. The more you do the reps in that space, you'll be amazed that you start to actually see some of the chess pieces moving before they've moved. And then that's when you can make some really good calculated risks, because you know that you've got some of that knowledge, inside knowledge, that others may not have because they haven't put in the hard yards. Some people get lucky, as I said, but there's a lot of other people, it's not so much they get lucky. And you hear that comment, oh, you must have got lucky in life, to do well in property. Now, there are some people that they just land on the right deal, the right time, the right place. It didn't come through lack of knowledge. But I know so many people as well, it came as a result of doing the hard work, doing the hard yards, putting in the reps when no one else was looking, and then reaping the financial benefits and the future benefits because they did the hard work, the rep work when no one else was looking. And, for me, that's why I liken it to that space of health. A lot of people don't see the hard work. They see the end result. They see the healthy body. They see all of that, but they don't see the reps and the blood, the sweat, the tears. They don't see the early mornings. They don't see the motivation required to do that. And it's the same thing in your feasibility journey. The way you win the feasibility battle is by repetition, by doing it over and over and over and over and over and over again. Don't be the developer who did one project this year and ran one feasibility. Be the developer who's run hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feasos, who's run hundreds and hundreds of scenarios behind the scenes with no one looking, and it's enabled you to flex that muscle to be able to only go out and gather the sites that work, the sites that stack up. And again, it means then you've got a whole lot less stress, and you're able to confidently move from project to project to project. So look, I hope you enjoyed this short episode. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Share this around with anyone you think that's on that journey or is in that space, and I'm sure they'll get some value out of it. And if you've got any questions, feel free to chat to us or DM through the socials, and we'll see you next week.